Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one's entitled Planet X System Electrons Make the Energy in the Sun's Core Inaccessible. Now, as I have shown in Article 612 entitled Why Planet X Snow Sometimes Does Not Melt, when the Planet X planets were destroyed by the Creator who removed this light energy from them, particles lost all their gravitational energy and were left with a reduced amount of density mass, which is the mass which allows particles to interact, so that the matter they make up with will have a certain density. Particles with more density mass attract other particles more strongly and thus produce denser matter. But in addition, the density mass limits how much gravitational energy a particle is able to absorb. Thus, matter in a plasma state, or magma, is denser and is able to also absorb more gravitational energy. And here you see a diagram which represents all the gravitational energy that makes up a particle's mass interaction. So light energy giving rise to a particle's ability to interact gravitationally is in the form of particle mass, that's the red part. This is a proton, so that's proton mass. And then there's density mass, and then there's gravitational energy. And the amount of density mass a particle has limits the capacity that a particle has to absorb gravitational energy. Gravitational energy enables and determines the strength of the gravitational interaction. Particles can interact at the basic level directly through mass and density mass with matter that share the same creation parent and the parent matter itself. Additional gravitational energy increases the strength of the interaction. Planet X matter can only gravitationally interact with Earth matter once they have absorbed gravitational energy from Earth electrons. A particle in the gaseous phase will have the least density mass, whilst a particle in the Earth's core will have the most. So the density mass is the orange part and the gravitational energy is the yellow here. And the gravitational energy gives increased strength to the particle and the density mass. And these can only occur between matter of the same density or with the same parent. So now heat is photon energy which results in the movement of particles. Free photons have extreme high heat because they move at the speed of light. Particles which come from photons always have lower heat than photons because they move at speeds less than the speed of light. Gravitational energy is energy which determines the strength of the gravitational interaction and is the photon energy which allows particles to interact with other particles as a result of their mass and density mass. And what happened to the Planet X matter is it ended up with no gravitational energy, so the yellow part is gone, and reduced density mass. So there's much less of the orange. So because of that, the gravitational energy, which allows gravitational interaction with matter outside of a celestial object. So that means that the Planet X objects lost the ability to interact gravitationally with other celestial objects. They were also placed in a much lower density state because there's less orange there. Now matter is made up of protons and electrons. Protons have more mass than electrons, and since matter can exist in several density states, liquid, plasma, solid and gaseous, protons must have different mass density states. Matter in a fluid, in other words, in a liquid or a gaseous state, can carry charges and is thus a plasma. But once matter becomes a solid, it can no longer transport charges and is thus no longer in a plasma state. Electrons are about 2,000 times less massive and are carriers of gravitational energy. In other words, photons existing within particles of light through a celestial object. Thus, electrons carry gravitational energy from the core to the outer layers of a celestial object. Electrons seem to be different from protons in that they can interact with matter in many different energy states and with matter from different parent cores, which suggests that they do not have density mass but are said to carry a certain amount of photon energy only, but having gone through the death process are no longer able to absorb any. They have thus become inactive, and all they can do when they join with a proton deep inside the Earth is make the gravitational energy in that proton inaccessible, which explains why the Sun has over a few thousand years lost the ability to emit light, when it should have lasted millions of years, even with the energy that the Planet X objects absorb from it. And this is illustrated here how an electron, this would be a solar system electron, and it has all its gravitational energy. It's got its mass. It's much less than a proton, but it still has mass. And this is the massless particle that gives rise to its charge. It's a negatively charged particle. This is just photon energy inside of the orbit of that massless particle. And so it has mass. It has, instead of density mass, it has something which is a part of its mass, but it's a density level identifier, and this would be where it would return to when it needs to replenish its gravitational energy, or GE. So this that would be part of the red part. The orange part is gravitational energy as well in this case, and it gives the electron a certain capacity. In other words, it sets the amount of gravitational energy or photons that it can absorb. So part of the electron's mass may act as a density level identifier so that it returns to the density layer it originated from to absorb energy. But having no capacity to absorb any gravitational energy, it simply makes the proton energy inaccessible. So that's the Planet X electron. It has nothing. All it has is mass, no gravitational energy, no capacity to absorb gravitational energy. So when it combines with a proton, and this is what would happen, here's the proton. It has a lot of gravitational energy, and an electron with the appropriate mass to combine with this proton, depending on what energy density state it's from, it will combine with it, and then it will form a neutron. This now becomes a neutron, and then some of the energy from the proton flows to the electron, and once it does, then it will be repelled by the proton, because now the gravitational interaction between the two has enough strength for the electrical interaction or attraction between the two to be overcome. So the electron now leaves the neutron, so this goes back to being a proton, and the electron goes back up to the surface of the planet. But when this electron is a Planet X electron, it has no capacity to absorb energy, so the neutron stays in the state, and the electron cannot absorb energy and cannot thus leave the neutron, and thus the energy within this proton becomes inaccessible. It's locked away. And this diagram illustrates the electrostatic and the gravitational interaction. And the electrostatic interaction causes protons and electrons to always attract each other. That's why the arrow points towards each other. And the gravitational interaction opposes it. So in the gravitational interaction, they repel each other. But the strength of this interaction depends on the amount of gravitational energy inside both particles. So if there's very little gravitational interaction in either the electron or the proton, they will tend to combine due to the electrostatic interaction into a neutron. So in conclusion, Planet X system electrons become unable to carry gravitational energy after all their gravitational energy was removed. Thus, as the number of these Planet X electrons increase inside Planet X system objects, the object's gravitational energy becomes increasingly inaccessible, which leads to a quick death, such as in the case of the Sun, which within a few thousand years became unable to emit light. You may look at Article 500 for details on that. And these are the references. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.